All right, you guys, welcome back. We have Lauren Fay here, right? Last name's Fay. I always forget. Yep. We have Lauren Fay here with us on the podcast today. Lauren has been in my recovery community for the past, couple months or so. And she has just been like the biggest breath of fresh air. Like, I just love you in the group. Anytime you're on our group calls, it's just like, yes, 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 yes.
Bringing in life's wisdom, like bringing in life's wisdom and experiences. And I think coming in knowing experiences are the catalyst to change and are actually a really good thing. So like, yeah, put the cartoons aside. Let's have real talk.
Yeah, let's have real talk, and let's be real people, and let's like be adults, and let's understand that like it's okay to acknowledge that we have these issues. And yeah, anyway, so I just like loved how you presented yourself in the group. You're a very intelligent woman, and you are a alcohol recovery coach, and I'm excited to dive into this topic because whether it's an ED or whether it's alcohol, there's so many like underlying things going on that are very similar. And in a lot of ways, it can feel very similar when you're going through both or you're going through them at the same time. So I would love to start out the conversation with you by asking this question.
Okay.
What is the one thing that you would love to like scream on the rooftops to society at large about drinking culture?
About drinking culture, I would like to challenge people to be brave enough to experience life and the experiences that life presents without feeling like it needs to be enhanced in any way other than just the blessing and the beauty and the privilege of being alive, of being a human being in this world. What would it feel like to actually just authentically express yourself without being altered or changed in any way? And that is so unfamiliar and so unknown, especially in our drinking culture, but people have done it. We haven't always been ruled by this idea that socializing equates to drinking and getting silly and losing your memory and doing things that you would regret. What about just trying to show up as you? And I think a lot of people don't really know what it feels like to just be themselves without some sort of change here or there. And I think the idea of just being yourself is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And coming from someone who has a history of eating disorders and addiction, obviously I'm one of those people that had a really hard time just being comfortable with being myself.
Yeah, and we're gonna dive into that. I was at the hot springs the other day. This was a couple months ago, and there was this guy there that was like, he had a six-pack with him of just like beers, and he had like a big beer belly and everything. And he was so loud, like so just not the vibe of the space. Like these are really kind of secluded hot springs up in Santa Barbara. And it's like, and this guy was just like talking so loudly, like so just not paying attention to everyone trying to have a good time. And there was this little kid there. He must have been 14 years old. He was like, hey, do you want a beer? Do you want a beer? And he's like, no, you're too young, but you'll need this when you're older. Baseball games, the movies, the, date nights. He's like, you'll have tons of this when you're older. And I was just like, no, 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 no. Like, why are you telling this kid that it's like, as an adult, you'll need this? Like, you can't do anything without this. And I just hate that message of like, we can't just go out and experience something. It has to be under the influence.
Yeah. Yeah. And having that wherewithal to know the energy of the space that you're in and like being able to read the room and holding yourself in a compatibleness with what's going on around you. Like that does all get eliminated by alcohol. You do lose that connection and yeah, really understanding your surroundings and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. It does lower your inhibitions clearly. Like we know what alcohol is. Everyone knows what alcohol is and how it, can really alter how you show up. And so that's an interesting point to have something like as serene and peaceful as hot springs and have someone who is still so connected to this liquid that literally changes our demeanor and have that be now the ambiance of the space is like not even something that probably was in his awareness.
Wow. You know, I was hearing a bunch of friends talk the other day about the Barbie movie, and I was like, oh, I can't even remember like the last time I've been to a movie theater. And my friend was like, oh, it's so great. You go, you get a cocktail, you sit down. I was like, wait a minute, you get a cocktail? I was like,
Yeah.
since when do you go to the movie theater and you get a cocktail? Like, and
Yeah.
I see it being introduced in so many more spaces where it just doesn't, in my mind, as someone who's sober, not sober, I don't know what you call it. I just don't drink. I never had an issue with alcohol, but I just choose not to drink. It just is crazy to me to see it like kind of infiltrated in all these different spaces where I'm like, why are we drinking at a movie theater now?
Yep.
Why are
I
we like
know.
drinking at our little kid's birthday party? Why are we like, yeah, it's so interesting to me. So I want to hear a little bit of your background, your story with alcohol and how you started waking up being like, this is not supporting how I want to live in life and who I want to be.
Right. Yeah. Well, and thank you. And just thank you for having me on today too, because we both have a niche that is extremely compatible with one another, but also that is so big for so many women and humans in general, but I target women. I know that you do
Yeah.
as well. And so just to have the conversations about disordered eating, eating disorders, alcohol addiction, you said, what would I call it? What's interesting about that is the word sober and I'll get into my story, don't worry, but the word sober and sobriety really do have this connotation that that person must have had a problem.
Yeah,
So someone who's
totally.
sober meant that they can't have something because they had a problem with it. So it's a touchy word for a lot of people, but then there's just so many alcohol-free humans in the world too, and the people are, especially the younger generations, the kids right now, like in their early 20s, I feel like are actually being like, I'm not going to drink. It's stupid. Like they're seeing it for what it is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've noticed that kind of
Yeah.
like the Gen Zers, like they're
Yeah.
not, now listen, they're into vaping, they're into like,
There's other
a million
things.
other things. But I think like alcohol, thank goodness, is losing kind of its allure with that generation.
Yeah.
And from the people I've talked with, because I work with girls from, 14 years old all the way up to like 50. So a lot of girls in their teens, I find that it's because they've seen their parents have awful relationships to it. And
Yeah.
they're just like, they just decide, nope, I'm never going to drink this because I don't like how it changes my dad. I don't like how my mom acts when she's on it. I don't like that they're always doing this. I'm just not even going to introduce it into my world.
Right, right. So, yeah, we can put a pin in that because it's interesting that that's happening in Gen Z, and yet it's also alcohol is becoming so present in things where alcohol isn't needed, like drinking at the movie theaters, full cocktail lounges in theaters. So, we can definitely come back to that. But so, like my personal story, I mean, today I am an alcohol-free empowerment coach. I'm also a Reiki master teacher, sound bowl healer. I've got some sound bowls behind me. And so I had to take a very holistic approach to how I help people, women, change their relationship to alcohol based on my own story. And so I didn't have the examples of alcoholic parents. I had a very actually great upbringing. I guess the biggest challenge in my upbringing was my dad was a military officer who was often gone on deployments. So he was gone a lot because of his job, not because of any family dynamic, right? So I had a pretty platonic standard family, mom and dad and a sister. And I remember them drinking like wine coolers at barbecues, and I would take some sips and I loved the flavor. I don't remember having the experience of loving the way it made me feel. Like, I don't feel like that's my story, but obviously I liked it, right? Because I would like take sips and things like that. And then progressing into high school, I was a varsity cheerleader, captain of the varsity cheerleading team, varsity golfer. So I was an athlete, I was a community member, I was a scholar, and behind closed doors in my social scene, I was a drinker. But if that ever trickled out into my life, I would have lost my sports. I would have lost all of that, right? So it was very secretive. But I remember it being just fun But now that I'm almost 6 years sober and I've had so much time to really look back at my journey, I know now that I was absolutely using alcohol as a way to fit in, but also feel accepted and comfortable in my own skin. So even though from an outsider's perspective, I mean, captain of the varsity cheerleading squad, I actually had really, really low self-esteem and a debilitating relationship with perfectionism. So how this will tie into my eating disorder history is I knew my body before I knew alcohol. I will never forget the first time a male in my life, not a family member, but a male in my life, pointed out the size of my thighs, because I'm a figure skater, a gymnast, you know, a tumbler. And so I was an athlete, and I was young, and I'm having my thighs commented on. And like from that moment, I was attached to my body. Right. And so moving into high school, when it's just mean girls and you're really like your body's changing and it's confusing, alcohol was a way to like be the loose one in the room. Same with college, although in college my eating disorder behavior really became big, so my drinking actually got lower. Like I had the typical first year where I partied my face off. Don't get me wrong, it was a lot of memories that I wish I could undo and forget, choices I would not have ever made sober, and situations I got in because of my drinking that, you know, are pretty not good. But it did kind of teeter. And then I became a corporate businesswoman right out of college. And at that point, I wasn't drinking a whole lot until I was. So in corporate world, there was happy hours. You know, I was like the only female amongst all of these businessmen in a new community. I was a new homeowner, and I just got taken in by the men at the bars. And that's where I learned about martinis and wines and champagnes, things different from my college years, you know? And I really started to drink a lot again in a way of being accepted and being like brought into community as a way of belonging, really is what it's really going to boil down to.
That's such an interesting point right there, if I can pause you for a second, because I feel like a lot of people, whether it's on the diet culture side of like, I just feel like everyone's going gluten-free. Everyone's talking about how veganism is the best thing. Everyone's kind of pressuring me into like ordering the salad instead of ordering a hamburger like I want. It's the same thing with the alcohol, where it's like, I just want to fit in. And that's what we do when you're working in corporate, or when you're a real estate agent, or when you're, you know, whatever you're doing, there's all these activities, there's all these moments that are surrounded by alcohol. And I get it that like people fall into it. It's just unfortunate that it's a thing that like impacts your mental and physical health in such a large way that like so many people are going to fall negatively into it.
Yeah, it really is. Again, if the collective is doing something, if you're not doing that thing, then suddenly you don't belong. And so it's very easy to fall into, it's not even the peer pressure of a friend being like, drink, drink, drink. You know, no one ever held a gun to my head and said, you have to drink this booze, right? But there was that innate sense of, but if I don't, I'm not going to belong. And not belonging is the number one fear of our human existence. We're meant to be in community. We're meant to gather. And right now our society is gathering us around alcohol. So again, I digress a little bit, but my alcohol use definitely streamlined really quickly in my corporate years. And I ran away from it. I knew it was a problem. I was drinking behind closed doors. I was drinking before the event, at the event, and then again when I got home from the event. It just was a lot of alcohol. And I ended up following a boyfriend to Hawaii. So I grew up on Hawaii, military. Like I said, my formative years were on Hawaii, and then I went back as an adult. And now I'm on an island where, you know, you're hiking, you're surfing, you're kayaking, you're doing all these things that don't need alcohol. And everything I did involved alcohol, everything. And I will never forget when my sister and brother-in-law came out to visit me, and we were planning a day trip, a full day away at the beach. And I'm like asking what drinks they want. And my sister was like, you know, Lauren, not everything has to revolve around alcohol. And I was like, what? Like, totally caught off guard. Like the thought hadn't even crossed my mind.
Mm.
So I did notice that it was a problem because there were things I would be embarrassed over. You know, my neighbor who was a veterinarian came over to help me with my dog in the middle of the night, and my recycle bin was overflowing with empty wine bottles because my boyfriend, who was a Marine, was deployed. So I was home alone.
Yeah.
So little things like that, you know, it's like, okay, this is, I've been caught. So moving forward, ended up back in Seattle, and, you know, drug warning in Seattle, I did end up getting into cocaine as well. And it was recreational illegal drugs. It was never a problem. I think what happened was it streamlined my alcohol and it streamlined my mental health. And so I went downhill real fast. And I'm actually really grateful that I had that year of drugs, because I don't think I would have stopped when I stopped if I hadn't have been streamlined as fast as I was, if that makes sense.
What was happening with your mental health at the time? You said that mental health was kind of being impacted.
Again, it was like I wasn't where I wanted to live. I wasn't in a relationship that I wanted to be in. I wasn't doing the things I wanted to do. And yet I didn't know who I was. And so this debilitating relationship with perfectionism was, who am I in this world in accordance with what I think other people want me to be? And I had no sense of personal autonomy and identity.
Okay, so this is very interesting because, like I said, I really have never been a drinker. I've had literally probably 15 drinks in my whole life, and I even think that's maybe like like kind of really exaggerating. I have been dating someone who's a drinker.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm getting frustrated because I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I'm not doing the things I want to do. I'm not being the person I want to be. I'm not like exactly what you just said, but like I'm saying it, and I'm just like near someone who's doing these things. And so I can't imagine like being the person doing those things and feeling like the waves, the anxiety, the depression, and then the calmness that comes right after drinking, and then the big kind of drop after. I couldn't even imagine actually being in that, because I'm just right next to it and I'm going crazy with it, with just witnessing the highs and lows of someone else, and with feeling like I'm constantly doing like, we're going to a bar at 2 a.m. Or 2 p.m. sorry, on a Saturday, right? And it's like, oh, why am I here? I'd rather be paddleboarding or like at the swimming pool. I'd rather be doing something. So this is very interesting when you said that, because I was like, yes, I feel that. Like,
and that's really what it boiled down to for me personally, was like, yes, okay, I did use alcohol as a social lubricant like many people do, but I have always innately been a very social, loving, personable person. So when I started to use alcohol to do something I already was, it actually reversed how I showed up in the world. And I became very introverted, and I became very isolated, and I became very like fearful of getting into the room with other people, because I had this like, again, debilitating like fear of being judged and not being good enough, or something being wrong with me. And so alcohol as a depressant just, again, took that mental health down of me being a really actually happy, beautiful, free kid, to being a super self-conscious, low self-esteem, faking it till I make it, like double life, which is exhausting. I mean, how I presented myself in the world, which was so well received, was not how I felt behind closed doors when I was alone. Right. So this like kind of double life. That's why when I came out and said like I have a problem with drinking, people were like, no, you don't, because it's not what they saw. Right. So that all being said, it streamlined really fast. And I had a moment where, again, it went from like social drinking Lauren to drinking behind closed doors Lauren to Lauren doesn't want to be alive. And when I got to that point, it was like, I have to do something about this. I scared myself, and sometimes that is what's needed. So I definitely hit a rock bottom, and I'm so grateful I did. Again, a rock bottom is going to look different for everyone. And I think everyone actually wants to have a bottom, because that's the lowest you're willing to go, it doesn't have to be low. It's just the lowest you're willing to go. Right. And so mine was like, this is the lowest I'm willing to go. Mine was because I was like, I don't want to be alive. So that's pretty low. Not everyone's going to go that low. And I bounced off from there. That was my launching point. And my sobriety came with already a solid foundation of energy work and meditation and metaphysical texts, and people like Wayne Dyer and Gabrielle Bernstein, Debbie Ford. Like, I just ate them up while I was drinking because I so badly wanted to be free, that when I stopped drinking, I really just embodied everything I had been like soaking in like a sponge. So as my approach today, where I say it's a holistic approach, is because I do believe the alcohol is a neutral fact. Like, it can be anything. It can be alcohol, food, sex, gambling, money, drugs, whatever.
Totally. That's why I said it's so similar to an ED. I'm like, when I talk to alcoholics, I'm like, wait, am I talking to someone with an ED? It feels so similar, where I'm just so like similar. All the underlines, like
it's all the underlying. So if my underlying thing was I'm not good enough and there's something wrong with me, well, no wonder I had eating disordered behaviors too. I always thought there was something wrong with me. What do? You want to fix it, you want to change it, or you just don't want to feel it. And then also on the other side of that, you want to feel in control. So drinking, and I think, in my opinion, like disordered eating behaviors, are all giving us the false illusion of control when everything in our inner world is feeling very out of control. And again, it doesn't have to be the external world that's out of control, because my external world looked fine. I was not broke. I was not homeless. I was not jobless, but my inner world was totally out of control. So it makes sense that I was like seeking tools to try to calm that down.
I have a question for you. Do you find that a lot of people don't understand or don't recognize or never come into the awareness of them having a drinking problem because there's so many people with, like, you can call it a quasi drinking problem or an actual drinking problem, and so it just kind of gets bypassed? Because I'm thinking of this, of like, there's so many people that I even know who are like, I have a job, I hold down a job, I'm paying my bills, I have good clean clothes, like I'm not ruining my life, right? How we might have envisioned it when we were younger, but maybe we had an uncle who's an alcoholic. I know I did, and was like, an alcoholic, like, was back and forth out of jail, was always wearing very raggedy clothes, had no money, like, so that's what I always kind of viewed an alcoholic as. But now I'm like into my 30s and I'm starting to create these friendships with people, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, are you ever going to come to that awareness? Because the outside all looks pretty and shiny.
Exactly. And that is who I work with, to be honest, because we have this idea based on the imaging that's been projected to us, and from some people's own personal experiences from different generations that really struggled, with the alcoholism and whatnot. So we have people who are like, well, that's not me. I'm not like how they are in the movies. I'm not like how my family member was. I've got it all together. And not only do I have it all together, but I'm just like everyone else around me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, green light, permission slip to continue my behaviors. And so my question always, always, always is, are you happy with how you feel? Like, are you in full acceptance of your life as it stands with you doing the thing that you're doing? Because if you were to play the comparison game, it's really easy to like play off that your life is actually unacceptable for you. And I can tell you, like, part of my early sobriety journey involved AA. And to be honest, again, I got sober almost 6 years ago. I didn't really know what else to do. I had no idea if even like holistic coaching was available type thing, right? So anyways, I started in AA, and I remember sitting in the room and being like, I'm not like them. But I didn't want to be alive. So who's judging, who's making that? It all has to be you, and like what you want for yourself, and your bravery and willingness to admit that your behaviors aren't working for you, because otherwise you can blend right in and then you just suffer.
There's such a danger to that. And I see the girls with EDs do that as well. There was a girl yesterday at the gym, and I walked in, and while not everyone who has an ED is underweight, right, or looks a certain way, I think as an ED recovery coach, I can pinpoint someone who has an ED pretty
Yeah.
easily. There's a certain
Pretty fast.
look. I think there's a certain rigidity to it. So it's not even
And just
necessarily their
energy.
body weight. Yeah, it's their energy, it's the rigidity, it's how she was acting and moving around the gym. I was just like, ooh, and she was pretty, underweight, and you could tell even just with that, like you can see rib cage and also extended belly, and I'm like, oh, that is just such a
Yeah.
sign of an ED there. And I
Yeah.
was like watching her around the gym, just like pushing herself, pushing herself, pushing herself, but like, feeling like she probably is like, I'm doing what everyone else is doing, right? But I'm looking at this going like, no, girl, no, 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 like take a rest, take a rest. So then I'm sitting in the sauna, and one of the guys goes, dude, did you see what happened to that girl? And I was, no, what girl? And the other guy was like, yeah, dude, she like completely gashed up her leg. She just like completely tumbled over. So I didn't know who they were talking about, right? But then I went over to the cold plunge area, and I saw this girl, that girl that I was watching, right? She was there. She had her leg up, and it was just blood everywhere. She had a big ice pack on her leg. And I went over and I was like, hey, just like curious what happened. She's like, oh yeah, so stupid. I mean, I shouldn't have done that. I'm like or I'm training, sorry, for a marathon in 4 weeks. Like I should be more careful, but I was on a box, like on this, she wasn't doing box jumps, but she was on a box. She was doing calf raises, but she decided to hold like a 50-pound weight in her hand above her head instead of hold on to anything.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so she like got like out of balance, and she completely fell and like just skinned her whole knee and everything. Anyways, all that to say, she probably didn't notice.
Yeah.
She probably doesn't notice because she's like, I'm training for a marathon. Everyone trains for a marathon, and I'm just like working out at the gym. And like her biggest worry when she was sitting there with her leg literally bleeding out was like, oh, she's got to be able to run though tomorrow. Like I have a big training day. I need to run again.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, yeah,
That
the
obsession of the mind.
delusion can be real big when we're in it, thinking like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, because everyone else is doing this. But I'm like, yeah, but like I ate like a, bacon, cheese, avocado hamburger before I came here. Like I'm training way differently than you.
Right.
But we don't really see it.
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, because I've had my addiction with alcohol, and I mean, even just the stint with drugs, and then my eating disorders, it's like I see I can see it, and I would never ever call anyone out on it. That is not my job. Like
It's not a
everyone,
judgment. It's not a judgment at all. You
no,
just
no
understand,
judgment.
honestly.
If anything, there's a ton of compassion, because it's like, oof, I know. Like,
Yep.
I know where you're at right now. I know what you're feeling. I know the mental health or the emotional health or spiritual health that you're in right now. Like for me, I see someone and I'm like, okay, everyone has their own journey. Like the universe has everyone's back. People's journeys look different than one another's. They're ready when they're ready. Some will never be ready. It's all good. For me as a coach, it's like that acceptance that I can't just fix everyone, right?
Totally,
No,
totally,
not
totally.
that I'm fixing anyone. Oh my God, don't get me wrong. It's more like I always want to show people what's possible. And yet I will meet someone where they're at if they're not ready to get there, And so when we see people walking around that are in it, it's like, okay, they're in it, but so was I. And someone noticed me when I was
Yeah.
in it.
Yeah,
So
it's really hard. I mean, I think with girls with EDs, because I went through it myself, I really have no judgment, and I just have that like compassion of like, I just want to help you, and also understanding that I need to not say anything, you know what I mean? That's why I went over to her and I was like, hey, can I get you anything? Are you okay? I'm like, oh, I have compassion. I was like, I've done the same thing. Like I have 18 stitches on my shin because of box jumps, because I was crazy one day and doing too high box jumps and whatever.
yeah.
But with people with alcohol, I don't get it because I've never experienced it. And it's so hard for me to not judge it of like, why are you doing this? And I have to remember that of like, everyone has their own journey and it's life, and we all are trying to coping. And there are these big things like food and alcohol that we can use to try and cope. So my question to you, Lauren, is being in that space of you were dealing with EDs, you're dealing with alcohol issues. could someone have said something like, how did that like feel when someone would like bring up like, hey, you're drinking too much, or like, hey, maybe you're not eating well, and like we're worried about you? Do you feel like that would just like throw you further back into behaviors? Feel like you get angry, or would it kind of eventually kind of hit of like, oh yeah, that's right, this isn't normal?
That's a really great question. And I'm sure it's going to be different for everyone. For me, it felt very confronting. And I think that confrontation made me like push back. And I know that pushback was fear for one, and also embarrassment. Like it was embarrassing to be witnessed in something that I knew was a problem. So could it have helped? I think it only helps when it's landing on ears and a heart and a soul that's available to receive it. And even though I knew I was suffering, and even though I hated the way I hated having eating disordered behaviors. Like I tried them all. Okay. I hated all of them. And I hated being, feeling like, my drinking was a problem and I was drinking more than I wanted to. Like I hated all of that. And yet I wasn't taking that step to change it because my body wasn't like aligned yet with the action and the empowerment that it really takes to make such a big change. It takes an act of bravery to change your eating disorders and to change your relationship to alcohol. And when you're in it, though, the last thing you feel is brave. You feel really weak, right? And this is
Someone
a
pointing out your weakness is probably like,
yeah,
stop it. I don't need other people saying that I'm
yeah.
perfect and I'm weak and I have flaws.
Yeah, like you already feel weak, you already feel defeated, you already feel maybe helpless and hopeless and powerless and like a victim, and you're in self-loathing. And these are generalized views. Obviously, I'm not like saying you. But and I'm not also saying this is applicable to everyone.
No, no.
I'm just saying like when you're in it, I mean, we wouldn't intentionally suffer like that. Like no one would choose to actually
Yeah.
suffer like that, right? So we're using it again as a tool to not feel something that we're feeling. And then when someone's highlighting the fact that like you're doing it wrong or your way's not working, you're doing the best you can in the moment. So it's really, again, confronting. And I know that a lot of people come at it with the best intentions because they want to help. They don't want to see
Yeah.
someone they love suffer. It just has to be at a time where the person is willing to receive it. It's really what it comes down
So
to.
then what are family members, again, both of ED and, alcoholics, what's their role? How can they be supportive? You're sitting here, you're watching someone do very unhealthy things. I've always kind
Yeah.
of struggled with this, and it's person by person, it's going to be different, and it depends on your relationship to them, I'm sure. But I've always kind of struggled with like, yeah, like what would I have wanted? I don't even know really. Because I have my sister trying to like, bring up things on more the medical like side of things because she's a nurse, and she was like, look at what can happen to your heart. I'm like, okay, like I
Yeah.
don't care, right? The only person that helped me was my one sister, my younger sister, who literally just said nothing. She was my
Yeah.
friend. She was there to listen whenever I wanted to talk to her about things. She was
Yeah.
there at the end of my journey to help make me food and to help me get out of like this hard place I was in. But I never felt pressured. If I said no to something, then she was like, okay, fine. Well, I'm gonna eat it. And she
Yeah.
didn't even feel awkward about it. She was the only
Yeah.
one to help me. But I'm wondering, so like in the case of someone who is struggling with alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
what would you have wanted?
Yeah. Well, I feel like you really nailed it with the energetics and the relationship you had with your sister, because now that I'm on the other side of it, it's like, what would I have wanted? And really, when you're in any sort of addictive behavior, you're very confused, and you're not feeling like you're on solid ground, right? Like chemically, we're just off. And so to come at it in like to have someone come at you totally judgment free is just where you can kind of almost exhale, because I guarantee the person who is suffering is already judging themselves harder than anyone could possibly judge them.
They know, right? It's like, even if you don't know, you're abusing things or
like,
you're abusing your body. Yeah.
yeah. And so I love like that approach of, your sister, just like, okay, don't judge me. Don't try to push me faster than I'm able to go. Like acceptance, even though, again, we innately want to help people. We don't want to ever sign off on their shitty behavior, but sometimes it's just acceptance that like, this is part of the journey,
But that's
and
hard. I find that really hard, especially in relationship where it's like, okay, I don't want to mother you. I don't want to judge you. I don't
yeah,
want to make you think like I'm counting your drinks or anything. But then also to express your concern and to set your own boundaries for your own life of like, I don't want to be like feeling
yeah,
this way in life or doing these things. I feel like it's like no matter how gentle I try and go about the issue,
yeah.
it's like it's gonna somehow still trigger the heck out of.
Yeah, such a delicate topic because, obviously, like people again are wanting to help with the best intentions. And so it's really like, can you trust that this person is in a process, is in a journey, and rather than pressuring and forcing and like projecting onto this person, can you show up in love, and can you also show up as possibility of what this person can look forward to? So like your sister eating the thing that you weren't giving yourself permission to eat is like energetically giving you permission that one day you can do the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're coming at it with a just much more gentle, tender, compassionate approach of not judging the person who's in it, not believing anything's wrong with them because they already believe something's wrong with them too. Like I'm talking about like belief work,
Yeah.
not really human experience work, but like belief work. And then just showing them what is possible, giving them hope, like being a beacon of light,
Yeah.
I think is really is a really important approach, and also making sure they know you're available when they're ready. So this pressure isn't going to streamline the process at all, and it's probably going to slow down the process, to be honest.
Yeah.
But then the person who is now the witness, you're right, set boundaries. Like if you need to remove yourself from a situation that's too uncomfortable for you, then do that.
Yeah.
I know it's harsh, but sometimes you have to take care of yourself,
Yeah,
right?
I
And if
think that's
someone
a
doesn't
fine
want to help,
line. I feel like that's the fine line to try and balance of like at what point, okay, I can let you have your journey. I'm good with that. I watch people in their journeys all the time. I never get mad when a client comes to me, right? And
yeah,
goes like, hey, I can't get this. I'm like, I know I was in it. But I have to remember that, like, okay, I can see them in that and I can also decide if I want to participate in it.
exactly. So
Like,
for
do
me,
I want to
like,
be here to support you? Or
yeah,
yeah.
for me on the other side of some eating disordered behaviors, for instance. So like when I came to you, I was really struggling with orthorexia, which was my obsession with healthy eating. And it was debilitating. It impacted all areas of my life. It impacted my relationships, my health, my livelihood, my joy, my desire to really like thrive in this world. Well, I had a desire to thrive in the world, and it was impacting me being able to do that. So
Yeah.
anyways, when I came into it and I was, that's what I was faced with. Now that I'm getting to like this other side of it, when I'm with people who are in it, it's very uncomfortable for me.
Mm.
I can relate and I can hold compassion because I know what it was like to be where they're at. But I'm actively working so hard for my own liberation and freedom that sort of like magnetized energy isn't setting me forward for success. Right. And so I have to set boundaries. Like I'll go, for a walk with you, but I'm not going to go out and eat with you, things like that. And so you do get to set boundaries for yourself, because at the end of the day, like you have to set yourself up for success. And I know we're talking about a lot of different key players in this conversation, might be getting a little convoluted, but we have the person who's in the journey. We have the person who wants to support them on the journey, who has no knowledge of what they're actually going through. And then we have the person who's been there, is on the other side of it, and still has to set boundaries to not like be in situations that make them uncomfortable and that might compromise their recovery and their journey and their freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the girls that I work with, we kind of always do a little like, let's look at who's in your life, who's not, or who's in your life, or who's on your Instagram page, really, is what it ends up being that's not supportive for you. I have everyone like clear out people on Instagram being like, stop following the fitness account, stop following the people talking about going vegan or going keto, whatever it is. It's like, that's not going to be supportive for you. And you have to learn how to, when you finally say yes, like, I am ready for this. I do,
Yeah.
as a person with the, disorder, I'm ready for this. Now it's up to you to set boundaries with like, I can't be constantly like, an alcoholic shouldn't be walking into a bar. Like, that's
Yeah.
probably not the best place for you to be. There's plenty of other places. But as we were talking about before, it's getting fewer and fewer places, right? That's
I
completely
know.
alcohol free, which is really unfortunate. But and it's the same with dieting, right? Everywhere, it's on every single label, there's something keto or low carb, whatever it is. But you got to set boundaries as much as you can of like, yeah, but I'm not going to like scroll on this girl's page for hours and
Yeah.
hours.
That was a big thing for me. So let's talk about alcohol for just a second. And when it comes to like, it is the societal standard, right? So when you're changing your relationship to alcohol, you are now having to, one, like create a new identity, but also learn how to show up in a world that really isn't setting you up for success. And you have to be like super proactive in your journey. So in the beginning, it might involve changing your social circle. It might involve changing the places that you're used to going. It might involve changing like your nightly rituals. There's so much change that
That's why you
happens.
can't just ask someone to change in 2 seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into it. And so you do like have to be proactive to set yourself up for success. And like fast forward to, when I came and started working with you and I realized how big it really was in my world. Like one of the things that showed up for me often was something would come up on Instagram, like a drink this in the morning to heal this. And that became my new rule. And it got to the point where I had so many rules based on what other people said worked that I had no idea what even worked for me. I had never even given myself like an honest chance to explore like what my body wants because I just always told her what she needed based on what I was hearing and seeing and reading and learning. And so the boundary became unfollowing all of these accounts that were just confusing me because I was so confused. I had no idea who I was in relation to my body. Just like when I became sober, it's like I had no idea who I was in this world as a sober woman. I had to recreate that identity and I had to recreate my relationship with my body and my food and my physical activity and things that support my healing journey and things that don't support it. So there is a lot that goes into it. And so earlier in the podcast, you said, why can't you just change? And that's an approach that happens so much in the drinking culture. When someone notices someone has a problem, why don't you just stop drinking?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I can stop drinking the substance, but guess what? There's going to be 100 other things too that I have to work out also. It's not just that. So, and that can be too big of a task for a lot of people to take on.
There's so much underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just hearing you talk about it, it's like I forgot how much I had to do that myself with the food and my body and everything, where it's like, yeah, now I'm living in this world, but I'm trying to live in this world in a way different way. I'm trying to experience my body in a different way. And oh my gosh, that's so hard. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is. I'm just now realizing, yeah, it's the same thing for someone who's been drinking all their life. I have to know now how to socialize. I have to know now how to, how to go to dinner, like without
Yeah.
using this substance. It's kind of the same thing as the ED.
One little tangent on when I was saying like there's so many different people involved. And so we're talking about now, let's say the person who's actually in the journey and they are now deciding it's their time. They want to look at their eating disorders or they want to look at their relationship to alcohol. And now they're willing to take the aligned action to do it. They also have to set up boundaries for themselves and do the due diligence of, again, setting themselves up for success. So like once I started working with you, for instance, I like marched out to my fiance and I was like, okay, I am trying something new. I'm dropping all of my rules. And I know that's going to be very confusing for you, but I'm asking you to not say anything. If I want to eat crackers, I don't eat crackers. I guess I do if I'm dipping them in something. I joked on that because when I first started my eating disorder, like crackers was what I went to. But anyways, I digress. I was like, if I want to eat chips or cookies or a hamburger at 10 p.m. at night, you're not going to say anything. And I was like, this is all me experiencing what feels good so I can learn myself for the first time without any outside opinions and noise and input. And I just had to like set that boundary with him. And it was a very loving, kind boundary, but it was like, I'm inviting you into my journey by telling you what I need and what I don't need. And it was like, don't say anything. Just let me experiment.
Has he been with you through your whole journey here, through the alcohol, through the eating disorders? What part has he been in?
So he was with me when I was drinking. So our relationship started 13 years ago. We had this like love affair. We actually met at a happy hour, on like a bistro with live music and whatnot. And at that point, I was actually drinking not a lot. Like I was like, it's a work night. I would never drink on a work night. So it progressed while we were together. And then we split up. And that was very heartbreaking for me. We went our separate ways. And that, I'm not saying that's why my drinking progressed, but I did definitely like my alcohol consumption increased significantly. So he saw me in that point of my life, but he didn't see me in some of the more severe of my like eating disorder behaviors with some of the actions I was taking. I'm obviously leaving out details, but then moving forward, when we reconnected 3 years ago, I was already in orthorexia. So I was so many rules on what I would eat and when I would eat and how I would eat and what I was willing to eat, what I was not willing to eat, and my exercise. And it was a huge strain in our relationship because we became travelers and food was the number one thing we talked about all the time. Can I eat? Where can I eat? When are we going to eat? Is there going to be something available for Lauren?
And he just took the approach of like, we're just letting Lauren do her thing.
He didn't question it. I mean, he like maybe would make comments here or there. I think it came off as like, wow, this woman really cares about what she puts in her body. Because that's what I played it off as. I played my insanity off as this is my temple and I only put the highest and best in it. I am not against that mentality at all, but I took it too far, right? So when does it become something that helps you into something that hurts you? And so he saw it in a way that was hurting me, but it wasn't something that it was really brought up like, is this a problem? Are you scared of food? Like what's going on? It was just kind of like, okay, this is how she is. I mean, it's been 10 years since we were together. So this is how she is, So when I started to really say things to him, like, I know that my behaviors and my obsession with food is stopping me from certain things in my life. Like when I started to like really pull things together and then divine timing, like falling onto your podcast at the gym, I invited him into my journey right away. And he was able to connect the dots. I mean, he's a smart man.
Yeah.
And
this was
it was
after like alcohol was kind of, you were done with that journey?
Yeah, I've been done with alcohol.
So interesting. You just
almost 6
went through
years.
such a similar journey.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and also it matches up, right? It's like maybe there were some underlying things that didn't really get resolved in the drinking that ended up transferring to, I'm just saying potentially, right? That ended up transferring to the ED. And so then you still were seeking out that control or that numbing or whatever it is. Again, I don't know what it was for your journey, but like it's so interesting though, because it's so similar. It's the process again of how do I be in this world? How do I feel comfortable in this world? How do I just be with myself?
What gives me the illusion of control? So, like I said in the beginning, I noticed my body before I started drinking alcohol. So the miracle of stopping drinking alcohol was a lot of the behaviors, that the actions I was taking with my eating disorder stopped. it was like, I remember I was like 2 months sober, and I think I was like walking to my house. I was outside. I specifically remember stopping and being like, oh my God, I haven't done this certain behavior for like 2 months. And so stopping drinking really quieted some of the aggressive action I was taking on myself. So the alcohol definitely exasperated a lot of the things I was doing, but it didn't just heal, again, all the underlying things, which you just exactly said. So it helped significantly, and it gave me the awareness to see what was still left.
Yeah.
So I removed the alcohol, and now I'm like almost 6 years sober, and I'm still working on my eating disorder journey because there's still some of those underlying things that are dictating my life and how I live my life.
The world, I don't even know how to explain this. Life, the world, everything. It's so crazy. It's so crazy what we go through and what we can become attached to.
Yeah.
Such a crazy, I mean,
yeah.
I'm just thinking to all the experiences I've had in myself and with other people, and just seeing it, how we get attached to these things, thinking that it'll bring us some sort of fulfillment that we're just not finding within ourselves, or we haven't learned how to create for ourselves.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting thing. But when you find out what that is,
yeah,
then you do. And I've had my journey, right? I went through eating disorders, and I went through this idea of like, I have to look perfect in order to be loved and to be deemed as successful, and to be admired and all of that. I feel like I had to have a certain body type. Then I finally was like, you know what, screw that. No, I don't. Like, this is BS, right? I finally saw the illusion. I was like, this is BS. I did that for 11 years. It never worked. But then right when my eating disorder stopped, I started to get into trading. Now I'm trading crypto day and night, day and night. I have a $2.4 million portfolio. And then within a matter of a day, within literally, it was like 30 minutes, I lost every single penny of it. And I remember just like, just in such just like distress. And I remember thinking, well, yeah, because you went from thinking your body needed to be perfect to have all these things you wanted, to your money and your bank account, like your outward success monetarily needs to be super, super high so that people respect you and love you and adore you and admire you. And it was the first moment where I felt like I finally just got rid of that, where I was like, I finally learned my lesson, universe. I don't need the body. I don't need the bank account. I don't need any of those things. I am good and worthy and lovable and admirable, and like just me, my energy, what I can give out to people, what I give to myself, that's all I need. And yeah, I was searching for it for so many years and so many things. I did it with religion too. I want to be the best Mormon I can be, right? And I just slowly but surely, I went through like 3 big kind of life seasons that helped me finally learn this really big lesson of like, you're okay. You don't need to be doing all these things to get all this attention. Just like give yourself self-love, and you won't need these outside accolades all the time. But yeah, it took me forever. It took me a long
I know.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, you can take out the alcohol, and then you could just move to the next thing, and the next thing, you can stop the eating disorder behaviors. You can just move to the next thing until you really do get that healing, on the underneath. But at the same time though, when you're stopping the action of like a depressant mind altering substance, is obviously going to help you do that work, right? So it's a good idea to take it out. I'm not downplaying the significance of actually stopping drinking alcohol, but I feel more free today than I have ever felt in my life. And it's incredible when you just start to get out of your own way, and you just allow yourself to be alive and to live and to not care so much. I mean, I care about so many things. I have so much passion about so many things, but not the kind that's holding me a prisoner to myself anymore. Right. And trust me, I'm not like perfect or healed or whatever, right? It's an ongoing journey, but I see it differently now. Like I really truly see where I was keeping myself prisoner, and that the only thing that would ever set me free was myself. It was no longer going to be dependent on anything outside of me. And the amount of energy I expended seeking for something outside of me to fix me, it's mind blowing. Like, where would I be today if I hadn't exuded all that energy? But now I have it back, you know? And so it's like, okay, how do I want to live? Like, the world's my freaking oyster. What's going to bring me joy today? I'm still going to have hard days and upset days and sad days, but I'm not going to numb out. I'm not going to revert back to old behaviors. I'm definitely going to surrender. I'm definitely going to trust. I'm going to fall into acceptance. And then I'm going to be an empowered woman to make a choice to feel different. I mean, the way I'm showing up today, radically different than 3 months ago, 4 months ago, definitely different than 6 years ago when I was drinking. It's incredible what's possible when we just like decide that it's time to be free.
Yeah. And I mean, we can't say when that's going to be. That's what's so difficult about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 36 years old, so I could go into, wow, I lost a lot of time and life. And I could go into that vibration, or I could be like, thank God I knocked this out at 36 years old. I have so much life left to live.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and to see it all as a journey of like things that you learn a lot about yourself. I learned a lot about micromanaging my emotions and how numbing out doesn't work and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating conversation. I really am. It's so interesting being completely out of this drinking culture and being out of diet culture. I just find so much fascination in both of them. I feel like specifically, I feel like more so honestly with drinking culture because it's just so prevalent. I can't get away from it, even though I'm totally out of it. I can't get away from it. And it's just so interesting being on the outside, seeing all of this happen in our world and viewing it in a certain way, but knowing that not everyone's going to view it in this way. I've been told I'm a little pretentious when it comes to like, you know, drinking and everything. Like you're just like always judging it and I'm like, yeah, I think I'm seeing it from a different level, you guys, but I have to understand that they're seeing it as, you know, what it's been for them, a social lubricant. It's been something they bonded with their dad and their uncles with. It's been, you know, it's been all these things for them. And I need to see it more as that, to have more compassion for those who are kind of caught in it, but then set my boundaries and go, I think I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, I just really want friends who have a healthy relationship with it.
Exactly. And something that I experienced a lot, because you were asking about my journey with my partner, like these last 3 years that we've been back together, I judged him so hard for the way he ate. I completely streamlined the way he ate and nutrition and well-balanced meals, because that was my passion, my obsession, right? And now it's like, I was judging him because I wanted what he had. Like, I wanted that freedom. I wanted that ease and that flow and that space and that non-caring. And I had no idea what that was like, you know? And so I was like, I wanted something that I didn't know. It was unfamiliar to me. And so I judged it. And now it's just like, even our relationship has significantly improved because I am kinder to myself, you know, and it's definitely coming out into the relationship. So that whole judging thing, like, you know, to be an outsider judging others and then to be like the insider judging the thing that you want, it's like, all in all, where's the compassion, where's the love, where's the peace and the acceptance and support, you know, are going to be really good vibrations and frequencies to bring into any sort of healing that we want to do as a collective.
And just know that it's going to take time, whether you're the person in it or the person that's out of it, watching someone go through it. I think that's the hardest part, because we want people to experience freedom. There's so many clients I want to shake, being like, if you could just be in my body for like one day, in my mind, just like feel how this is, you would want it, right? But we are the journey of life.
I know. I mean, we are such an instant gratification, quick hit, quick result culture. And I like know for a fact time is definitely a huge part of the journey. And so with everything that we've said in this podcast, it's like, please, to the listeners, do not be discouraged by the amount of work or the amount of time it takes, because the amount of time you're going to have in your freedom is going to be so much more than what you are spending to get there. Right. So for me, like with the working with you just in a community setting and like being so uncomfortable, it brought me back to when I got sober and being so uncomfortable and being like, I'm not doing this a second time. I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to get through this discomfort, and I'm going to get to the other side. And it's just freaking sucks to be honest. Like, I am pissed about everything. Everything sucks. I hate everything right now. And I'm going to stick with it because I'm not going to do it again.
I'm glad you said that. I think that's kind of the mentality I took doing my ED recovery, where I was like, yeah, this sucks.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to ever deal with this ever again. And I think that cemented my, like, I'm continually pushing forward and I'm
Yep.
not going to allow myself to turn back, because the idea of trying to go through the beginning process of weight gain again, and like, no, I could not. And I, to this day, could not ever put myself back in that position, because it's just like, oh, I just, it is a lot, but also there's so much goodness. And I'm so glad I went through it. I
Yeah.
just don't want to go through it again, but I am glad I went through it. And I
Yeah.
feel like there was so much I learned about myself, so much patience developed, so much love developed, so much compassion developed, that I wouldn't have developed if I didn't go through it. It was a necessary time, but it also, yeah, I was very much like, we're going to learn these lessons. We're going to move forward, because it is a hard thing, but beyond worth it. So I
Yes.
started this podcast asking you if you could, be standing at the top of the building, yelling to society something about, drinking culture. You said a beautiful response. I want to hear now, kind of wrapping this up. What would you say to diet culture, to women who are dieting, to women who are stuck hating their bodies? And I know you're still in your own journey, but I think that's the beauty of it. What are you discovering now on your journey of healing that you're like, I just want to scream this because this is what I'm discovering now?
I actually just got so emotional. This is a powerhouse question, full body goosebumps. I would say close your eyes, close your ears, and tune inward and cultivate a relationship with yourself like you've probably have never had before. Silence the noise of all external influence and suggestions and tips and tricks and should be's and should not be doings. And just ask yourself, what feels good for me? And what makes me come alive? And what do I want right now? And what do I deserve right now? And learn yourself on that level of intimacy that you, again, probably have just never had before, because the world is so loud, and this loud world drowns out our connection with ourselves. And so, like, since working with you, I mean, I'm a Reiki master healer. I do energy work, sound healing, all of these things. And yet with you, tuning into myself when it came to my food and my body and nourishing me, myself, was probably deeper work than I've ever done before, because I don't think I ever truly asked myself, what do I need? What really feels good? And the things that I was so scared of, my body loves. She was like, holy freaking Luya, I've been waiting for this. Like, I've been wanting this for so long. And we just can't hear that when the world is so loud. So that's what I would say. And then you will become the most powerful woman in the world.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And that honestly is like my message wrapped up in a pretty bow. Like that really, that's why I'm like, I don't even post that many food things. Like I do here and there just to show like, hey, it's okay to eat out. It's okay to do this. But I'm never being
Yeah.
like, here's the meal plan. Here's how many calories. Here's how many carbs. Here's like the perfect balance of things. I never talk about that, because I'm like, don't listen to me about it. Like,
Yeah.
literally, I want you to stop listening about that. All
Yeah.
my work tries to do is to tell you that is important to do. So whatever your body's saying, hey, I had this client yesterday leave me so many voice messages. I just like my dietitian told me that I had to have protein in the morning and that I can't have carbs because I have high androgens and I just really want a bagel with peanut butter and I just really, really want it. And I've been wanting it for years and years and years. And I was like, just give yourself the bagel and peanut butter.
Yeah.
It's okay. You don't have to have protein at every meal. It's
Yeah.
okay. Your body's gonna survive. Your body doesn't work like that, where it's like, oh no, she gave us carbs instead of protein. Like, it doesn't work like that. We need to like understand that there's a wisdom in your body being like, we just want a bagel. I don't question it now, even when it is the weirdest concoction of things that previous me would have been like, you can't have a protein bar and like a sandwich and some chips and like and a cookie and you can't. I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care because all I know is that when I listen to this, I feel my best.
Yeah.
So I don't care if it sounds weird, if it's a weird makeup of, I'll literally the other day I had like chocolate chip cookies and a green juice and pineapple and chicken for breakfast.
Yeah.
Random, but it was exactly, I was like, I need this.
Yeah.
I need this. So you learn to just like not care what everyone else is saying because you understand that the power lies within. And I feel like that's drinking as well. Learn to not care about what the world is saying about drinking and it's fine. And keep on going and we need this for this and we need it for that and you need it to feel social. Figure out what you actually need to be giving yourself in order to be like, we are social human beings. The idea that we would feel awkward without a substance to be social is like,
I know,
to me.
it's crazy.
I'm like, oh.
So just like you said, just to wrap it, we know like as spiritual beings, because you use the word wisdom, which I know we've used a few times, that we have all of the answers within us. And I have been on so many journeys and meditation journeys, like 10-day silent retreats, yada, 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 where I've heard the teacher say, all the answers are within you. I'm a coach. I'm saying, I'm going to guide you to your own answers. I'm not going to give you the answers. And yet I never connected that to my relationship with food, not once until just now. Right. And so all of the answers are within you. Trust the innate wisdom of your body. Give yourself permission to do the things that don't seem right up here because we've been taught a certain way. But when you gave that example about the client, that is the perfect, like for someone who's not in it, that's the noise inside the body. And we're dealing with all the external noise. And when it's just that loud, what do you do? Right?
Yeah.
So that's where you just quiet and go in, come back home to yourself.
Yeah.
It's the best place to live.
It is. I absolutely loved having you on, Lauren. I'm so glad that you've been through this like beautiful journey on so many different spectrums and that you're now like sharing it with the world because there's so many people resonate. If you've ever had an issue with alcohol or suspect you have an issue with alcohol, I cannot highly recommend Lauren's page anymore. I love the stuff that she posts and I love her energy and the way you approach it too, of like in a more holistic way and not just in more maybe the classical sense of things. And so definitely make sure that you go and check her out. If you have issues with eating and your relationship to food, then you know where to find me. We appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. I hope it helps.